Hello everybody and welcome to my very first what if video. Now this is going to be a what if Deku had venom, because I've been seeing these a lot and this is not an original story. A bunch of people have done it before and I love the concept of this. I think it's a really interesting story to mess around with and play around with, so we're going to get into it today. So Deku is stillborn quirkless, and when he goes to the doctor when he's 4, he's told that he's quirkless, and he's absolutely crushed by it. And Deku's father was there with him and Inko at the doctor, and he's upset that he has a quirkless son because he wanted to make his son a hero and make tons of money off of him. And Inko was also upset because her son couldn't be a hero now, and she knew what Hisashi was gonna do to Izuku now. And so when Izuku is 4, we go to Venom's planet of the symbiotes, and we see Venom talking to Riot along with 3 other symbiotes preparing to go to Earth, and Venom asks Riot, how long will it take us to get there? And Riot says, it'll approximately take us 4 years to get there. And so for the next 4 years, Deku got bullied way harder than in the anime. And you guys are probably like, well, he's only 6 or 7 and 8 years old. Why is he? No, this is my what if, deal with it. And so Deku is really Bakugo bullied him way harder than he does in the anime, and he would come home with bruises and scrapes all over his body and sometimes even blood. And Inko was starting to get worried, but Izuku just brushed it off. And then when he got home, it was even worse because his father would abuse and beat him and throw him against the wall, or grab his hair and tug him to his room and lock him in there and not feed him for the rest of the night. And so one day when Izuku's 8, he is getting bullied by Bakugo, and Bakugo takes it too far one time and throws a big explosion at Deku, and it ends up knocking him out and also having blood dripping down his forehead. And so a few hours later, Izuku wakes up on the playground with a small, not a big pile, but just a small pile of blood near his head on the ground. And so he gets up and runs into the woods that was near his house because he ran home, and then he's like, I don't want to deal with my father. So he ran into the woods and found this rock in this clearing with a bunch of trees around it, and he sat on the rock and cried out of sadness and anger and just wondering why him? Why was he born quirkless? Out of all the people, why him? He did nothing wrong. Why was the world so cruel to him and being so discarding him for just being quirkless, a disability that he couldn't help, a deformity that he couldn't help. It wasn't his fault he was quirkless. And so this is when a meteor crash lands a few a mile away from a good half a mile away from where Deku was, and Deku didn't see it. I mean, he saw it, but he didn't pay attention to it because he was too upset to even care. And so this black ooze starts creeping out of the holes in the meteor rock, and this is Venom, if you didn't know. And he was separated from the other symbiotes, but he thinks that they're all dead, which they are, except Riot. Riot was separated from Venom and was crash landed a good few other miles away. Like, I'd say about 20 miles away from Venom. So they were pretty far separated. And Riot is like moving around trying to find a host, or else he'll die soon. But he ends up being found by All for One's doctor, like scientist, doctor, whatever. And so then the doctor proceeds to like analyze him and like wonder like what the hell is this thing and like what can it do, and he comes up with nothing because it's an alien being. They don't know how to study it that well. And so they just throw Riot in a pod in a abandoned warehouse and leave him there because they deemed him useless. And they tried killing him, but they couldn't find any ways to kill him. And so we go back to Venom's point of view. He's like moving around in the woods trying to find a host. And he sees this boy with green hair sitting on a rock holding his legs and crying, and he like thinks, oh, it's the perfect host. And so he goes up to Izuku and attaches to his leg and hides there. A few hours go by and Izuku goes home, and his mom like asks him where he was, but he just brushes it off and goes up to his room. And his father was asleep on the couch, drunk, and like fell asleep with a bunch of beer all around him. And Izuku goes up to his room and just lays down and goes to bed. And so then Venom says, oh, this is my perfect chance. And so he bonds with Izuku and goes into Izuku's mindscape, like his mind, and talks with him. And Izuku like wakes up in this dark room and he like can't see anything, and he's like, hello, is anybody there? And then he sees these like this tall figure come out of the darkness with pure white eyes and like these small white veins all over his body. And Izuku is like scared because it's got a big row of sharp teeth. And he's like, who are you? What do you want with me? Where am I? And Venom's like, I Venom, and we are in your mind. And Izuku's like, okay, what do you want with me? And Venom replies saying, I need a host, and you are the perfect host. Our compatibility is perfect. And Izuku's like, host? What does that mean? And Venom explains like all about his race and how he's the last survivor of his race, and if he didn't find a host soon, he would die. But Izuku was the perfect host. And Izuku is just like, why would you want to bond with a quirkless nobody like me? And Venom's like, quirkless? What does that mean? And Izuku goes on to explain how 80% of the population is born with a special power, but he was born without one, and therefore he got bullied and abused for it. And Venom then says, I could give you these things you call quirks. When I bond with a host, I have powers, and the host is able to use those powers as he or she wishes. And so Izuku gets excited about this. He's, I'm gonna have a quirk? Really? And Venom says, yes, you are. And Venom's just like, this kid is way too pure, because his freaking smile is just so bright and seems to light up even the darkness itself. As the white veins on Venom grow bigger and more like pronounced, and Izuku's like, what's happening to you? And Venom says, because of how pure-hearted you are, and you have no greed or anger and no ill will, therefore it's rubbing off on me, and I am not being corrupted. Izuku's like, corrupted? What does that mean? And Venom goes on to explain how if the host is greedy and like filled with hate and anger and filled with all like these negative emotions, the symbiote itself becomes corrupted. And Izuku's like, oh, that's not good. Well, lucky that I was there, because then you would be a bad guy. And Venom's just like, yes, luckily you were there. And Izuku goes on to hug Venom, which I think is just so sweet. And Venom's like, what are you doing? And Izuku says, I'm hugging you because you're giving me a quirk and you're the nicest person I've ever met. The only person that hasn't called me a quirkless nobody, and the only person to ever not hit me right away when they meet me. And Venom is like, how could somebody hurt such a cute little kid and somebody that's so freaking innocent? And so then Venom proceeds to ask, what is your dream, Izuku? Because while they were talking, Izuku like said, my name is Izuku, and Venom said that my name is Venom. And so Izuku proceeds to say, I want to be a hero, and I want to someday be just like All Might. And Venom says, I can make your dream come true, Izuku. We will become the number one hero together, you and me, as partners. And Izuku's just like, and Izuku is still hugging Venom while he's saying this, and Izuku looks up at Venom, and Venom looks down at him. And Izuku says, partners. And so then Venom says, well, Izuku, you should probably get some rest and go to sleep. And Izuku's like, yeah, I probably should. And so Izuku goes to, like, gets out of the mindscape and goes to bed. And after Izuku, like, agrees to, like, be partners with Venom, Venom decides he's gonna look through his memories. And as Venom's looking through the memories, he's wondering how the hell this kid is still freaking alive, how much he's gone through in just a summary of 8 years. And so this makes Venom feel even more, like, sorry for the kid. And you'll be wondering, well, isn't Venom, like, mean and, like, kind of rude? And yes, but that's because his host was corrupted, I think. And so, Izuku is Venom's first host, so he's also becoming nicer. But he's still gonna be the old cocky Venom that we all know. But just, he's not gonna be all like, kill this guy, kill that guy. No. And so, over the next few years, Izuku and Venom, like, start training. And the next day, Izuku wakes up and, like, walks downstairs, and he, like, slowly walks downstairs because he, like, doesn't want to interact with his father. And when he gets downstairs, he peeks around the corner to see his father is still crashed on the couch. And he sees that his mom is probably in her room. So he runs out the door and goes to Dagobah Beach to start training with Venom. And when Izuku gets there, he's like, this place is filthy. How could people do this? It was such a beautiful place a few years ago, and now it's a trash dump. And Venom comes out of Izuku's shoulder and says, yeah, it's pretty filthy. Even my planet isn't this filthy. And it's all dark and gloomy there. And Izuku's like, wow, okay. And so Izuku says, well, why don't we clean the beach as a extra training? Because I want to start training with you so I can so I can pass the UA entrance exams for high school. And Venom's like, yeah, that's a good idea. And so they proceed to clean the beach, and as they're cleaning the beach, Izuku, like, talks with Venom a little more inside his head. They're, like, talking back and forth through thoughts. And you may be saying, this kid is 8 years old, and he's pushing garbage around training? Yes, deal with it. And so Izuku proceeds to clean the beach and since he's like 8 years old, it takes him way longer than a few months. And as they're talking, like Venom says, I'm weak to fire and sound. And Izuku says, well, why don't we work on that in a few years since I'm too young to play with fire and I can't think of, and when I'm older we can use some of this garbage to like make sound waves and vibrations so we can train up your weakness so you can't get that much hurt from it. And so over the next 2 years, him and Izuku proceed to train. He kept Venom a secret from everyone. His mom, his dad, everybody at school. And him and Venom practically became brothers at this point. So we skip to when Izuku is, I think it's 15. No, it's 16. So we proceed to skip to when Izuku is 16. He's still gone through all like the bullying and harassment, abusing from like his father and all. But his father had to leave a few years ago because he had to go overseas to work. And Izuku was extremely happy about this because his abusive father wasn't going to be around anymore. So when Izuku was 10, Izuku's father had to leave. And so now it's just him and his mom. And Izuku's mom is like all like depressed because her son doesn't have a quirk and all that. And she's not mean to Izuku. She still takes care of him and feeds him and tries to make him happy and all that. And so, but whenever he gets like scrapes or bruises or like burn marks, Venom heals them right away because it's not that big of a deal. And if Izuku were to like break his arm, it would only take like a few seconds to heal it now. Because when Izuku first like got the injuries, like if he were to get a broken arm when he was like 8, it would have taken Venom like a few minutes it would take Venom like up to a half an hour to heal it fully. Because they like just bonded and like Venom wasn't that strong. I mean, he was still really strong, but he wasn't like that strong. But now he's really strong because they've been training for freaking they've been training for 8 years now together. And so we proceed to view Izuku in class, and the teacher walks in and says, okay, I've got these papers for all of you to fill out for what you want to do after middle school. And the teacher's like, oh, I know you all want to be heroes, and throws papers up in the air as the class starts using their quirks, except Izuku and Bakugo. And Bakugo proceeds to say, like, does a little speech, like, teach, don't throw me into all these extras. They'll be lucky if they get in as some sidekick to some D-lister. And then the teacher reads off, oh, Bakugo, you want to go to UA? And he's like, yeah, probably the only one in this damn school is going to make it. And then the teacher proceeds to say, oh, Midoriya, you also want to go to UA. And the class all looks at him and is just like, Midoriya? How the hell is that quirkless loser going to get into UA? And they all start laughing. And then Bakugo comes over to Izuku's desk and, like, makes an explosion on his desk. And Bakugo was expecting Izuku to jump back and be scared. But Izuku just lifted his head up and, like, just had, like, a blank expression on his face. Just staring at Bakugo. And Bakugo's like, what the hell? This damn nerd's supposed to be scared. What's going on? And Bakugo's like, you're never gonna make it into UA, you quirkless loser. Why don't you just give up now? Make it easier on everybody else. And Izuku's just like, no. I will get into UA, and you can't stop me, Katsuki. And Bakugo's just like, what did he just call me? Because he's like, but Katsuki, he's supposed to call me Kachan, what? And Bakugo in his head is just freaking out, but on the outside, he's just like, you damn nerd. You'll regret saying that, as Bakugo goes to throw an explosion at Izuku, as all the class is like watching this, and the teacher is just like, okay, stop, kids. There's no fighting on in school, and Bakugo's not listening. He throws an explosion at Izuku, and then Izuku's just like, Venom, you know what to do. And Venom's just like, are you sure, kid? And Izuku's like, yeah, I'm finally ready to reveal you to everyone. Or at least reveal you as a quirk to everybody. Because Izuku and Venom agreed that nobody, unless, like, Izuku really trusted them to tell him about Venom himself. He was just going to play it off as, like, his quirk is a living being, like Dark Shadow, and has, like, its own thoughts and things, and they're, like, bonded together and they help out each other. And so this black goo, like, covers Izuku's arm and makes, like, a tentacle and blocks the explosion and knocks Bakugo's hand away. And in the class, the entire class is shocked. Like, you have a quirk? And Izuku's just like, yeah, what about it? And Bakugo's just like, you damn nerd, why have you been hiding your quirk? You think you're better than me? When did he ever say that? Like, what? And Izuku's just like, no, I know I'm better than you. As he says this, he, like, stands up and he, like, gets to Bakugo's height. And then everybody realizes Izuku's gotten taller. What? And he's, like, as tall as Bakugo now, and he's, like, standing, like, eye to eye with Bakugo, and they're, like, staring at each other, like, they're staring daggers at each other. And then the school bell rings, and Izuku walks out, grabbing his notebook and everything. As Izuku, like, as he gets out of school, he lets out a breath that he didn't know he was holding. He's like, oh, I'm glad that's over. And Izuku looks around to make sure nobody's there, and he's like, Venom, you can come out. Nobody's around. As Venom comes out of Izuku's shoulders, like, kid, that felt awesome to put that bully in his place. Izuku's like, yeah, he's been pushing me around for too long. And so Izuku and Venom proceed to walk home, and Izuku's like, hey V, why don't we take another route this time? It'll help us get home faster. And Venom's just like, sure, kid. As they proceed to take the tunnel route, and as they're walking through the tunnel, the sludge villain pops out of the manhole, as I forget what it's called, sewer drain, whatever you want to call it. And, like, the sludge villain's like, give me your body, kid. You'll be a good meat shield against that freak. I didn't know he was in town. As Izuku turns his head around, just like, what freak? And Venom just looks at the sludge villain and, like, narrows his eyes at the sludge villain, and he's just like, already taken, bub. As the sludge villain's like, what the hell are you? Because Venom is still on Izuku's shoulder. So Venom's, like, out in the open. And then Venom seeps into Izuku's body again, and they, like, proceed to make the Venom suit. Which, it's not, like, all buff like the real Venom monster, but it's more of kind of just, like, a sleeker version. Like, it's more smaller. I mean, it still has, like, big muscles and everything, like the six-pack. It still has the six-pack and everything. And he can make his arms and legs, like, bigger and more, like, as big as the actual Venom, but it's just, like, a smaller version of Venom. Because they didn't want to be too scary. As Venom parts one side of his face in, like, the movie and says, we are Venom. And they proceed, and Venom and Izuku proceed to beat down the sludge villain. Like, I mean, beat the crap out of him. Because since Venom is also kind of like sludge, you could say, like, it counteracts the sludge villain. So Venom is able to hit the sludge villain. He like makes one of his arms a tentacle and just slaps the sludge villain around the tunnel. And All Might pops out of the crater and says, "I'm here." And then he sees this black figure with pure white eyes just beating the sludge villain, like tossing him around like he's a rag doll. And All Might thinks, oh, it's another villain attacking another villain, and they're fighting. And Izuku sees All Might in the corner of her eye, and he's like, oh, crap. It's All Might! And Izuku's still like a fanboy hero. He's like, oh my gosh, it's All Might, it's All Might, it's All Might. And Venom's like, that's the famous All Might that you look up to so much? Izuku's like, yes, it's All Might. As Izuku, out of pure like excitement, gets like the sudden boost of strength and throws the sludge villain against the wall, splattering him on the wall, and he just like oozes down the walls like all knocked out. And Izuku and Venom like proceeds to go back into Izuku's body, and Izuku runs up to All Might. He's like, "Oh my, I'm your biggest fan. Please sign my notebook." And Izuku like takes out his notebook and like gives it to All Might, and All Might's just like, "Sure, kid." As he signs Izuku's notebook, and he's like, "Kid, what's your quirk?" And Izuku says, "Oh, my quirk? Here, come here." As Izuku looks at his shoulder and Venom comes out, he says, "This is Venom, All Might, and he is essentially my quirk, but he's a living being, and by just some extra advice, don't call him a parasite, he hates that." And Venom looks at Izuku like, "Parasite?" And Izuku's like, "I didn't say you were a parasite. Sorry, okay?" And Venom's like, "You better be sorry." And Izuku's like, I am. Don't worry, V. I wouldn't ever call you a parasite on purpose. And, like, mean offense by it. And Venom's just like, yeah, I know. As All Might's just watching their interaction and amusement. And Zuko says, well, I don't really have a name for my quirk except Venom. So I guess you could just say my quirk's name is Venom. Because Venom is essentially my quirk. And All Might's just like, well, you indeed could be a great hero with your quirk. Just try not to scare people with him, because he is a little scary in other people's eyes, I would say. And Izuku's like, yeah, I know. That's why I'm gonna have a hero costume and only take Venom out when absolutely necessary. And All Might's like, that's a great idea, kid. As all this was happening, like, All Might's like picking up the sludge villain as they're talking. And he's like, well, what are you planning on doing, young Izuku Midoriya? All Might, my name is Izuku Midoriya. As Izuku on the inside is like trying to keep his excitement to like a average level, but he's like freaking out on the inside. He's like, it's All Might, I'm talking to All Might. I'm having a conversation with All Might. And so then he's like, oh, I want to go to UA. And All Might's like, well, I hope to see great things from you, young Midoriya. As All Might takes off with the sludge villain. And since Izuku didn't grab onto All Might, the encounter with Bakugo and the sludge villain never happens. As Izuku like rushes home super excited. He's like, I just met All Might. I had a conversation with All Might. As Izuku like goes home and like runs up to his room and like starts writing down stuff in his notebook. And since like he like defended against Bakugo, his notebook didn't get blown up either. And so he's like writing down everything that happened and writing down some more notes about All Might. And also wondering, hey Venom? Yeah? Izuku? What should our hero costume look like? Since I can't have you as my hero costume because I might scare someone with you. Even though I personally think you're super cool. But what should our hero costume look like? Because you're not always going to probably be there. Even though it's practically impossible to separate us at this point. Because in the movie Venom, Eddie was separated from Venom. But they, like, it's really hard. I mean, they can still be separated, Izuku and Venom. but it's really hard to separate them since they've been bonded for so long. It's like nearly impossible to separate the two. And Venom's like, well, I want the suit to be black and white. And Izuku's like, yeah, that'd probably be a good idea. Izuku starts making the suit, like drawing out sketches for the suit and filling out a form for UA and throwing in his commission for a hero costume, like with his form for UA. And so then we proceed to go to the 10 months training. As Izuku is preparing, he goes out to dig up a beach where he usually trains. But something unexpected happened. All Might was also going there to train Mirio. Now, you're probably asking, well, isn't Izuku going to get one for all? No. I'm sorry, but no. I don't really like the fact if Izuku has a quirk, like if he were to have like a Spider-Man quirk or like lightning quirk or something, I don't think he should get one for all, because then he would just be more powerful and it wouldn't make any sense, because I would think if he does have a quirk, he would want to become a hero on his own with his own power and not take power from All Might. Take his quirk. And so then as All Might and Mirio are walking to the beach, they see this green-haired boy like sparring on the beach as he's like doing backflips and front flips and like punching the air and trying out new moves. All Might's like, hey, that's the kid I encountered yesterday. And Mirio's like, really? The kid you told me about that had a living quirk named Venom? And he's like, yeah, that's the kid. And Izuku like sees All Might. He's like, oh, All Might, I didn't know you were going to be here. As he's like, well, I came here to train my successor. And Izuku's like, oh, that's so cool. I'm glad the number one hero has a successor, since, want to like carry, the symbol of peace, everything. No, it's like, yes, exactly. And so Izuku's like, well, you guys could train. I could go find somewhere else to train. And Marie's like, All Might, could we train together? And All Might's like, that's a great idea. You can have a sparring partner, Mirio. And so, but then All Might turns into Small Might. And Izuku's like, what? And All Might, like, it goes on to explain his injury and everything. And Izuku never, like, he doesn't find out about One for All and all that, since that's, like, just between him and Mirio. But he does find out about All Might's injury. And so Mirio and Deku proceed to, like, spar and prepare for the entrance exams. Well, Mirio doesn't prepare for the entrance exam. Izuku does. As they're, like, training for the 10 months, Izuku builds up his physical strength and doesn't, like, he decides he should probably work on his body a little bit more, since he's been relying on Venom a little too much lately. As Venom agrees with this, like, if we were to somehow get separated or I was injured, you need to be able to fight back on your own. And so by the end of the 10 months training, Izuku has, like, double what he had after the 10 months training in the original canon. And on, like, the last day of, like, when in canon, like, when Izuku going for all, Izuku says bye to All Might and Mirio and runs off and says, I'm gonna go prepare for the entrance exam, I'll see you guys later. As when Izuku leaves, All Might gives Mirio One for All and says it'll kick in a few hours. And then Izuku, like, goes home and gets ready for the entrance exam in a few hours. And he walks out of his house and Venom comes out of his shoulder and he's like, V, are you ready for this? And Venom's like, hell yeah, let's do this and show the world what we can do. As Izuku and Venom walk off to UA. And that's where I'm going to leave it off today, guys. If you did enjoy, then proceed to hit that like button And if you do want to see more content, then feel free to hit the subscribe button along with the little bell so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. And if you do want a part 2, let's go for 18 likes. Let's see if you guys can hit the like goal, and if I get 18 likes on this video, I will make a part 2. I honestly want to make a part 2 because I'm really enjoying making this. And yeah, that is Fantasy Heiress signing off for now. See you guys later.